Hello everybody and welcome to another DaVinci Resolve tutorial. Today what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a bunch of text effects for titles. So I'm going to do 5 different text effects going from super easy to moderately difficult. The reason I'm doing 5 of them is a few of them literally take like 2 seconds to do, so it wouldn't be worth doing a tutorial on, but they're still nice to know. So we're going to take a look at the 5 effects. I've already made them, but we're going to create them from scratch. I'll have time codes in the bottom, so you guys can flick to the ones that you want. The first one is a kind of a jiggly little squiggle animation. Here, let me bring this up a little bit more. Come on, there you go. So here we go. So the text kind of squiggles around a little bit. The next one is a outline glowing, then fills up. I really like that. It's very classy. This one's a random letters that eventually form into a word. Good old classic burn away. And finally, the most difficult of them, this thing. This looks like 3D, but it's actually all 2D. It's basically just fonts with quite a few effects in it. So let's get started. The first one we're going to do is this squiggly text. So let's add a Fusion comp into the scene. We're going to go into it, open in Fusion. I'm just going to get rid of this one. And we are going to add a background. I'm going to make it red. You could make it transparent instead and have like a red background like in your edit timeline instead. But these are all self-contained for this one episode. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to make this red. So now I've got a red background. Excellent. Next, we're going to grab a text. Slap that in here. Let's find out. Let's write something. Here, we're doing a title sequence for a show called Nevermore. There you go. Let's find a nice font. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but you do want it to look, that's kind of nice. You might not have these different fonts because, you know, I've been downloading some. I've gotten a new, ooh, kind of like that. But this is more of a comic book type of thing. So let's go with like more of a Spider-Man-ish comic book type of font. Maybe this fake serif? That's kind of cool. Yeah, let's make that all jiggly. Perfect. All right, so we've got our text. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a displace node. Displace node. You gotta displace my heart. Okay, the displace node basically warps the image. And it does this using a displacement map that can be various things. So what we're going to use is we're going to use this fast noise. We're going to run this fast noise into the displace, and you've already seen, if I turn it on and off, you see a little bit of a warp already. And if I change the seed rate, oh, I thought you'd see something, so you don't. If I bring this back and put this in here, the white parts will, it's going to use the alpha layer to warp the image. Now, it's not warping it much because the refraction strength is very, very low. But if I start bringing this up, look at that. And that's all driven by the brightness of the alpha. Right? If I take a look at this, the brighter areas will warp more than the darker areas. Now, we are currently doing it as radial. So it's kind of radiating out. The middle will never warp much. It's warping more as you go outwards. So we're going to go XY instead. And now everything's back to normal because we've got 0 refraction. But if I go and adjust this, oh, look at that. We're adjusting the refraction this way and that way. And now if I go back to my fast noise and I bring up my seed rate, as the clouds move, the refraction, the image gets distorted in different ways. So we now just need to poke around with that a bit. So if I bring back my fast noise, I'm going to increase the detail quite a bit, lower the contrast. We're going to scale that up a little bit and bring up the brightness, or rather bring it down. Because remember, darker parts don't warp and white warps. So if it's a slighter gray, it'll warp a bit less. I'm going to reduce the seed rate a bit so it doesn't shimmer so fast. And let's see. It just needs to be a little subtle. This is actually pretty good. I'm going to go to my text. I'm just going to add like a bit of a black border, red outline, change it to black. And we're going to make it a bit thicker. There you go. And that's looking kind of neat. The problem is it's looking more liquid, and I want it to look more like it's shifting between different poses, right? Like kind of like when it gets to the end and it jumps back to the first position. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to use a node called the what is it again? Time lapse? Time lapse. No, not time lapse. What is it again? When you take stop motion. There you go. Stop motion. So we're going to use the stop motion node. And what this does is it holds whatever frame it's on for 5 frames. But you can reduce that to 1 or go up to 10. So we're going to leave it at 5 for now and see what that does. So if I bring, oops, that's not what I wanted. I wanted this one. Right click, scale, scale to fit. It's not exactly the effect I want. So if I come back here, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to jack up that scale. And we're going to bring up the detail a little bit. Stop motion's in there. Maybe if we go back to our fast noise and increase the seed rate a bit. Ah, there we go. There. We just needed to make the shift in between the 5 frames a bit more. So now if I go back to my fast noise, I'm just going to tweak that down a little bit. And there we go. We've got our effect. And you can play around with your details and really crunch up that text. Make it a bit more subtle, make it faster, like more, not faster, but more jumpy. Another thing you can do, you can go to the stop motion and bring it down and animate it on 2s instead. Or bring it up to 10 frames. So it holds every frame for 10 frames. Yeah. And that's it. I think 5 is actually a really good default for this. Maybe 6? Let's try 7. Kind of like that. And there you are. You've got your jittery text. Easy peasy. Next one. What is it? Okay, I love this one. It's so nice and classic. What we're going to do is we're going to come over here, go a couple of frames forward. We're going to add a Fusion comp. Open that up in the Fusion. Add a black background. Super easy. So instead of using the standard text tool, what we're going to use is we're going to use the shape text. So I'm going to bring in an S text. And the shape text, basically, it doesn't look different, but in the back end, it is different. It's not pixels, it's math, which allows us to do other things to it. But one of the things you cannot do is just grab that text and put it on here, because this is math and this is pixels. So we need to convert that text into pixels to be able to overlay it on top of our background. So let's start with a text. Let's say oldies 105.6. 106.5. There you go. So that's our text. We're going to choose a nice font. Something kind of classy. That supports the period. Let's go back to the top. I said, let's go back to the top. And then because we're doing an outline, we want something that's fairly thick. Oh, there you go. That's kind of cool. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so that'll be our text. Next thing we need a S render. Because just like a 3D scene, it needs to be transformed into a raster image. And now we can bring that into our background. Look at that. The next thing we want this to be an outline. There's a special node for this called the S outline. Boom. Excellent. Now, the outline basically removes the text and just makes an outline out of it. You can't really see it because the line for the outline is massive. So we're just going to bring that thickness down to something a bit more usable. That's looking pretty good. I'm just going to increase the size of that text. That's looking good. All right. So now I'm going to come back to my outline, maybe make that line just a little bit thicker. I like it. I like it a lot. So we've got our outline. The cool thing with this is the outline has the length and position properties. So we'll be able to use those for a lot of things. I'm going to rejig how I put things here. There we go. Because we're going to reuse this text node quite a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this outline. The reason for this is I want the same kind of thickness for it and stuff, so that'll work well. And I'm going to drive that text into it. We're going to use that in a minute. But first, what we're going to do is we're going to draw the lines. This is ridiculously easy. We're going to go to our S outline. We're going to go to S outline. We're going to go to length. We're going to bring it down, put a keyframe. You'll notice though that we've got a little dot, and that's because of the end of the line. It's made to be round. We're just going to cut it off. There you go. It's now invisible. Perfect. Next, we're going to go to the time where we want it to be full and just do that. And now it draws itself. Look at that. The next thing we want to do is I want to have a dot that's a little bit bigger that kind of guides the line along. So we've got our S outline here. We're going to go, let's go back to the other S outline and find where our lines stop. They stop here. So we're going to come here and we're going to set the position. We're going to set position, a keyframe here. And our length, what we're going to do is we're going to reduce this down to almost nothing. Actually, to nothing. So we've reduced this down to nothing. Now we've got a little dot. I'm going to make that dot a little bit bigger. Let's go 50. There you go. Double the size of the line. And now we've got all these dots. And when it gets to this point, I want the position to be here. And as we go backwards, I want it to be back at its starting position. And position is kind of like length. If we take a look, you'll see it's now moving the start position as it goes along. And because the line is only 0 pixels wide and it just has like a beginning and an end to it, it looks like a dot moving along. Add that to... Oops, I need a S render. Let's add an S render. Add that on top of the line, and what do we have? Did I do something wrong here? Oh, I'm not looking at the I'm not looking at the thing, which would explain why it's not working. And now it looks like those dots are drawing the lines. Look at that. Now, I don't want them to be there on the very first frame, so I'm going to go to my merge that's merging the dots on top. I'm going to go to my blend. I'm going to set that down to 0, put a keyframe, go 1, 2, 3, and make them slowly blend in. And then when we get to the end, like right here, we're going to put another keyframe, and we go 1, 2, 3 frames and make it disappear. Boom. That's looking pretty good. I'm going to go back to my outline here, and I'm just going to increase the size of the dot just a little bit. Yeah. Let's take a look and see what that looks like. That's looking pretty good to me. Maybe we could add some motion blur. Let's see what that looks like on that. Motion blur, max that out. Not really doing any blur here, eh? Maybe if we do it here, blend, motion blur. Okay, so now we're getting motion blur. The problem is it's now running at like 2 frames a second. Slight exaggeration. Now it's going to play correctly once it's cached. There you are. Looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. Oh, okay, I'm back. And that's looking really good. So we've got that part. The next part is we want the text to fade in at the end. So we're going to use this as text, and we're going to use an S render. So I'm going to get an S render. Actually, I'm going to be lazy. Control copy, control paste. There you go. And we're going to put it behind everything else, and just put it here. And now I can just grab this and find, let's turn it off for a sec. Find where the lines finish drawing, which is right about frame 60. So right about here is where I'm going to start making it come in. So I'm going to put a keyframe here at 0, and then we're going to go just a little past when the lines are done and finish blending it in. So let's see. It's currently playing at like 7 frames a second. Look at that. I think that's pretty cool. Next, what we're going to do, we're going to make this look a little bit more pretty. I'm going to add, right after the 2 merges, I'm going to add a blur just to soften up the image. It's a vintage type of, right? So like 1.2, 1.3, just to soften up the edges, not have it so crisp. And we're going to add a S-glow, soft glow. And then we're going to tame that thing down. So we're going to reduce the glow size a little bit and the gain just a little bit. Let's see what that looks like. Ooh, look at that. That might be a little bit too glowy. Glow size just a little bit down. There you go. It's looking pretty good. It's looking pretty good to me. Let's add the auto proxy so it proxies. There you go. It'll run much faster. Now, one more thing, just to give it a bit more sauce. We're going to go over to our splines. I've got it set to only show the tool that I've selected. So I'm going to go to my outline here, and I'm going to select my length property. And right now it's going straight up. I'm going to soften that up by smoothing out. So it's going to start slower, go faster, and then slow down as it gets closer. And we need to do the same thing to the position. Otherwise, it won't match. So we do the same thing here. And now line starts slower, goes faster, and then when it gets closer to the end, it'll slow down. And there we are. And that's it. That's the entire effect. That's a really easy one. I think I did it slightly different on this one. So if I go, for example, and I take a look, I think I put the soft glow. Yeah, you see, I put the blur and the soft glow on each line, so it wouldn't be on the final. Let's go and take a look if we move that around. If I go back to this. No. If I go back to here, this, open up. And if instead I grabbed all this, moved it over, move these over, grab these, control copy, control V, move this here, and move that there. Like that, and then copy this and paste it here. And paste it there, perfect, and then delete these. I think it'll look a bit better. What's really slowing down the render is the motion blur. That's looking pretty good. I think we don't even need the motion blur, really. We'll leave it. And that's it. That's the effect. Super easy, super quick. The next one's even quicker. It's ridiculously easy. So the effect is basically you start off with a bunch of different characters that randomly change, and then eventually it slowly starts writing out the word like that. So this one's even easier than the other two. I'm going to bring this in. We're going to open up Infusion, grab a background, put that in, grab a text. I'm not even going to bother checking it, finding a font for it. Over here, random lottery. So it's going to change a bunch of different characters to go to this word random lottery at the end. So we're going to right click on, now that we've got our text, we're going to right click in the text area, and we are going to use the text scramble modifier. And that creates a modifier here under the modifier tab of the text tool. And we can use the randomness to substitute characters from this list. So you can change the characters to whatever you want here, which is kind of cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the randomness here, and then I'm going to set the randomness at frame like 60 again to 0. I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I'm going to set the randomness to, let's say, 5. And as we play this, the characters change, and then eventually they get to be what we want it to be. But maybe 5 is a bit much. Let's try 1. And that should control the speed. And you see, like that. If I go back to it though, how can I control this? Can I remove time? What will happen with that? No, I prefer time. So there you go. And as it gets closer, it finishes. That's the entire effect. Now, to make it look a little nicer, what we can do is we can come here to Spline and change our randomness. I'm going to right-click, scale to fit, so we can see both. And then if I do this and smooth it out, it'll start slower and then go faster. Let's do that. And there we go. It's that simple. If you want to control it a bit more, you can add keyframes a bit further up. Like, so for example, if I really wanted it to slow down here, I can come down here and, let's say, add a new keyframe and set it to 0.02, for example. And then as it comes here, it'll have more time to be the word. Now I do have to go and fix our splines because there you go. That'll make more sense. And let's take a look and see what that looks like. And literally that's the entire effect. There you go. That's it. It's that simple. Next one. The next one is a bit more complicated. It's the good old burn away. So now we're getting into slightly more complex. It's not super complex, not like the one after, but it's still a bit more complex. So we're going to grab a Fusion comp, go into it. I'm going to get rid of my spline. There you go. We're going to put a background. I'm just going to put it as black for now. And some text. Let's find a text that's interesting. I'm going to say like pyromancer. There you go. That's going to be our text. Quite appropriate for a burn. Change the font to something fancy. I have to find something real quick. Here, let's go back to the top. So I've got font selected and I'm using the up and down arrows right now to... Ooh, that's kind of cool. I kind of like this bit crusher. Pyromancer. But I want something a little bit more fancy. There you go. Let's go with Black Chancery. How close are we to the edges? Let's pull that back down a little bit. Give ourselves some room. I'm going to change my text to, let's say, I don't know, red. Maybe a darker red. Nice. Now, what we're going to do, we've got our text. We need to control the alpha layer of this. So I'm going to use a matte control. I'm going to add that matte control here. And we're going to bring this up. And right now the matte control has, oops, nothing. I thought I'd put it on the line. There you go. Bring it in. Wow. So matte control is basically going to control the alpha of this text. Next bit, we're going to use a displace node again. So we've got a displace node, and it's going to go into the garbage matte of the matte control. So the garbage matte is basically saying, get rid of this. So it's going to allow us to cut something out, something that's been distorted. And what are we going to distort? Well, we're going to distort a rectangle. Not there. We're going to distort a rectangle, so we need to put the rectangle into the yellow. So the yellow's cutting out the text right now. We kind of want it to do the opposite. So I'm going to invert that. Is it? Let's see. We'll see in a sec. I think it is, though. Yes. Okay. So we want to invert that. And then the next thing we're going to do is we are going to grab a fast noise to give ourselves that crinkly edge effect. We're going to bring that fast noise here into the green. And now you'll notice that it's distorting the edges of the black box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab our fast noise and we're going to scale that up quite a bit. And we're going to add some detail to it and some contrast, and that's looking pretty good. Doesn't that look kind of like a torn up, like edge, burning edge type of thing? Now, if we add some displacement to that, we're going to go and put it as an XY displace, and we're just going to add some displacement like this on the y-axis. And finally, we're going to add just a touch of seed rate. What's that going to do? Well, maybe a bit more. It's going to create this edge that we're going to use to cut up. The way we're going to do that is we're going to move this rectangle up. So I'm going to go back to my first frame, and on my rectangle, on my center, I'm going to put a keyframe. And then I'm going to go, for now, I'm just going to go to frame 60, and I'm going to lift this up. And look what happens as I lift it up. Look at that edge that's getting burnt away, like eaten away by this edge. Because remember, anything that's black is being removed. Anything that's white is being kept. But we've inverted things. And look at that. Ooh, that's interesting, isn't it? So now if we play that, we've got a pretty good example. Scale to fit. That's kind of cool. Now we could also come here to our rectangle and soften up the edge just a bit. I'm just going to go to the middle here so we can see it. I'm just going to soften that edge a little bit. There you go. That's looking good. Now we've got the first part of it. Now we want it to glow, right? As it's burning on the edge. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, we're going to reuse this displace. And we're going to use a copy of this text. I'm going to copy this, but I'm going to paste an instance. So these two things are identical and they're linked. If I change something in one, it changes in the other. But what I can also do is I can come here, for example. Come on, where is it? All right, I can't de-instance color for some reason. So, but what I can do is I can now run this into a background as a mask. What? What does that give us? Well, the color's black, so I'm going to choose a nice yellowish, orangish color, kind of like this. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so we're going to choose that. We've got a copy of the text now in orange. What does that do? Well, not much. If I go back over here, we haven't connected it to anything yet. So scale to fit. There you go. So we're going to place it underneath this other text. So I'm going to put it here. By doing that, it's going to create a merge, but it's putting the yellow on top. What I want is the yellow to be under. So I'm going to go to my merge and I'm going to hit Control T, which will flip the input and output, the background and foreground. So now my yellow is behind the red. And we've got kind of that effect going already. As the red gets eaten away, it reveals the yellow underneath. But now we also want the yellow to be eaten away. Well, what we can do is we can grab a copy of this displace, right? And we want the yellow to get revealed as it moves up. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a bitmap. And a bitmap's going to take this information and turn it into an alpha. It's going to grab the alpha of that layer. Now that we've got that, we're going to run this into a nothing for now. I'll show you what I'm talking about first. Background. Right, so I'm going to grab a matte control. Because basically we're going to do the same thing to the yellow that we did to the red. So we're going to add a matte control. Where did I add it? I guess I didn't. I'm just going to copy this one. There you go. Going to add it here, matte control. And we're going to put this into the garbage map. And let's add a bit of a glow to it. Oh, we'll do that after. So what does that do? Well, as we move up, it's now eating away the orange. And you can kind of see it, like right there. You can see a little bit of it, but we need more of it. So what we need to do is we need to delay the erasure of the yellow a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a time speed. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to add a delay. So we're going to delay this displace that's been, well, not inverted, but this, yeah. We're going to delay it. And we're going to delay it by a couple of frames. So I'm going to go forward. And we're going to do this and delay it. Oh, not sample spread, but delay. I'm just going to delay it by a little bit. Perfect. And we're going to spread out the samples a bit. And nearest, will that work? Let's see what that looks like. No, let's delay that a little bit. Let's go with blend instead. And look at that. That looks pretty good. All right, let's see what it looks like on all the letters. Well, that might be a bit too much of a delay. Let's bring that back a bit. There you go. That's looking pretty good. The problem is you can kind of see that there's orange behind it. So what I could do is I'm going to invert this bitmap. So instead of, if I did that correctly, oh, no. Yes, and then this invert matte. No. So yeah, keep this uninverted. There you go. And there we go. And that's looking pretty good. Now, it's supposed to be burning, so we want it to glow a bit. So I'm going to go in here and add a soft glow. We're going to add it here. And we're the problem that we have is it's glowing outside of the actual letters. We only want the embers themselves to glow. So I'm going to grab this time speed and I'm going to use it as a mask on that soft glow. And look at that. Now we're going to reduce the glow size a little bit so it doesn't spread out so much. Increase the gain on it. And I think that's good. Let's see what we've got. That looks good to me. Let's go and take a look at it on the Edit tab. And there we go. So that's our fire effect. And finally, the most difficult of all of these is this one. Now this one, I've encountered some weird glitches with it, where suddenly my text node becomes 1 pixel by 2 pixels, breaking my entire tree, and there's no reason for it. I think I found a solution to it, so bear with me. This looks 3D. It looks amazing, right? It's actually just text with a bunch of effects on them. How many effects? Well, let's take a look. This many. Looks kind of crazy, but we're only going to do one. We're not going to do the subtext, which is what this is. Like, so for example, I can just, oops, not here. If I come here and on this merge and remove it, we're only going to do like this one because it's the same thing for the other one. So let's go ahead and do that. And like I've added embers and like a bit of a red glowy part at the bottom. Maybe we'll do it. Maybe we won't. We'll see. The embers are actually just video files that I have in my collection. right here, like these. Come on, Rising Embers. I don't know why it's not showing. Oops, that's not what I want to do. There you go. So just some stock footage I have. Let's go over here. Our Pyromancer. Add a new fusion comp. Right click, open in Fusion. We're going to add a background. We're going to add a text. Where's my text node? Right here. Slap it in there. We're also going to call this Pyromancer, just because I feel like it. Let's find a nice fancy text for this. Here, the text actually matters quite a bit. I want something nice and thick. It's got an interesting shape. I kind of like this one. Yeah, let's do it with that one. The Wild Breath of Zelda. Okay, so we're going to use this. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, so we've got our text. Next thing we need to do is we need to create a bump map. Bump maps are actually an old technology used in video games a lot to take a plain 2D texture and give it fake depth and height. You see it a lot in like walls and the ground and stuff like that. It's a cheap way of making something look like it's 3D while it's still being 2D. So let's create a bump map. Bump map. So we got a bump map, and you can already tell it's created some depth. And it does this by, colors and stuff. Right? Because white, and then it's got like basically this is black, so it's created some depth for it. Now, what I can also do is I can increase the height of it. Oops, let's bring up our bump map. So you see, it's creating a bit more height up to a point. And that's kind of cool, but it's not exactly what we need. So what we need is I want this to have kind of like lines in the center and not like be necessarily this flat bevel. You can do this by blurring the text. So I'm going to grab this text and add a blur to it. And then as I increase the blur size, watch what happens. Horrible, horrible things. Right? So we're getting a whole lot more depth. It's not exactly what I wanted, but now if we add an erode dilate right after it, and then start eroding, we end up with these kind of lines. But I only want that to happen where the text is. I want to get rid of this purple stuff here. So what I'm going to do is normally I'd put a mask into the create bump map, but they've removed that. So that's a bit of a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a brightness and contrast node. And we're going to mask out that node. Now, the problem that I've encountered is when using this text on these brightness and contrast nodes, every now and again, this goes and becomes a 1x2 pixel font, not font, but image, and it's broken and I have to redo it. So I'm going to try something different. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste this as an instance. And I'm going to use that as a mask. And hopefully that doesn't break everything. And now, if I come to my brightness and I come here, I can say multiply by mask. And now we've only got this. And we've got our letters. And maybe this font isn't the best. Yeah, maybe I'll change my font. Now, because I made this an instance, when I change the font here, it changes it on the other one and gives me a good idea of what's going on. This is looking pretty good. What if I increase the erode dilate a little bit? Yeah, look at that. That's much better. Which font is this? Squealer. Cool. I like it. Let's use that. So that kind of gives me the effect that I wanted. If I go back to create bump map, I can reduce the... No, I think that's good. Then if I do my erode a bit more... Yeah, that's looking good. Okay, so we've got that. And if I didn't do this blur and erode dilate, this is what it would look like. Oh, actually, without the blur, that's kind of looking pretty cool. Actually, let's do it like this. This is looking way cooler. Yeah, I increased the blur a bit. And that gives me that, which is kind of nice. Yep, I'm keeping that. Perfect. So now that we've done this, the next thing that we need to do is we need to use this because this looks terrible, right? Like it's all purples and blues and stuff. That's not what we want. What we want is we want to use this as a displacement map. And we're going to use this on a displacement map on a fast noise. Not fast noise. Yes, maybe? Let's see. Let's do it on a background first. Grab a background. I'm going to make this a gradient, and we'll just use that for now. We're going to use this in a displace. In the green. And we're going to run that. So it's going to displace this background. Let's see what it looks like. And now, if I bring this like this, you can already kind of see it. It's hard to tell, but it's there. So we're going to make some changes to our displace. We're going to increase the refraction strength. And maybe we're going to do this as an XY. There we go. And now if I grab this, look at that. We now have sort of pseudo three-dimensional text. I'm going to come in here and change the colors. I'm going to change this black to a dark red. And I'm going to change this white to a golden yellow type thing. No, not there. Like this. It's looking pretty good, looking pretty good. And now if I bring this up, kind of like this, and bring this down. Now, I only want this to show up. Let's bring this into the full thing. I want to mask this out so that it only affects the letters and not the background, right? So how would I go about doing that? Well, again, what I could do is I could just add a brightness and contrast right here. Not do anything to it, and bring this in there. And this is usually where everything breaks. Did it? No, it didn't. All right, everything's good. Excellent. So we're going to come back over here. We're going to set our multiply by mask, and look at that. Now I can use this to control the look of these letters. Isn't that cool? And I can change these colors. I could make, instead of making this gold, I could make this a gray type thing. Like this. I could bring the red up. Oops, I need to close this. Bring the red up. I said close this. Oh, I didn't save it. Bring this up like that. Okay. Have it climb up like this, or bring it like that and have a much sharper edge to the color. Tons of things we can do. I can also just grab these things here like that and move them around and change how the colors affect the letters. Kind of like this, which is awesome. Now, I could make this a little bit more interesting. Let's add a brightness and contrast right here. And then we're going to add a rectangle to it. So I'm going to grab all this, bring it down a little bit, add a rectangle, and slap it in here. We're going to increase the width and make it a narrow little thing. And now, with my brightness, I'm going to increase the gain and add a little bit of a reflection to it. Kind of like that. Let's make the height a little bit less. And let's add a little bit of a soft edge. And maybe reduce that brightness just a little bit because that's a bit much. There we go. Now, I don't like these colors. I'm going to go back to my background. And I'm going to go and grab that yellow that I liked earlier. There we go. If I go back to my brightness, like this, and rectangle, bring that soft edge down just a little bit. And there we are. Now, what does it look like on a black background? It looks epic. That's what it looks like. Maybe if I go back to my background and make that red just a little bit more bright. Yeah. Now, that looks really good. But what if I did this with a fast noise? Whoa, whoa, whoa. It's not what I meant to do. I'm going to grab a fast noise, put it here. I'm going to merge this. I'm going to merge the fast noise into the background. No, the other way around. Yeah. I'm going to merge the background on top of the fast noise. And we're going to use that here. And we're going to warp it around a little bit. So let's increase the scale. I'm going to bring in second node so we can see what's going on. So now if I turn off that fast, no, can't do that. But if I start changing, oh yes, on my merge, I need to come over here and do something. There we go. Yeah, so if I go back and choose one of these, that looks pretty good. Now I can play around with my fast noise and just give it kind of a bit more texture. And look at that. Maybe bring that down a little bit, kind of like this. So much more detail, so much more vibrant, right? And that's basically the entire effect. We've created a kick-ass font. Let's go and compare it to my original one. Totally different look. But you gotta admit, that looks pretty damn epic. Now, if I bring this in and add, for example, I'm gonna go back to my media. I'm gonna add those embers back in. Here, let's put this one over here, and let's put that one over here, like that. And put that one in front, like this. Bring this in like that. And we're going to add a transform to it because it's a bit bigger. Kind of like this. That one's the same size. Perfect. And now we've got these nice embers passing in front and behind. Maybe we'll bring that back out a bit. And maybe a bit to the side. Like that. And let's grab our background. We're going to make it a gradient. And this is going to be black. And this is going to be a red. Like that. Bring this down here. Like this. Let's just add a little bit of red at the bottom of the scene, as if, there's some type of fire or something. Maybe red's not the right color. Let's bring that to a orangish color. There, like that. And there we have our absolutely epic metal title. Now, if we want to add another little thing that could be fancy, we're going to go back over here to Open in Fusion, and we're just going to add a shimmer to it. So I'm going to come over here, and right after this brightness and contrast, right before we merge everything on, we're going to add another brightness and contrast. Pre-divide, post-multiply. And I'll show you why in a minute. We're going to grab another rectangle, slap that on here, increase the brightness. We're going to grab this rectangle, make it thin, soften up that edge. We're going to rotate it a bit, like that. Come back to our brightness and contrast, re-increase that gain a little bit, like that. And we're going to go to the beginning, take that rectangle, move it all the way over here, and go right about... Actually, let's do it right about here. I'm going to put a keyframe on center. This. And that's it. Let's take a look and see what that looks like. Yeah. Got that nice little shimmer that passes right through. And that's the effect. It takes like a perfectly standard flat 2D text and turns it into this rocking, like epic 3D looking text that you can do tons of things with. Like I said, here I was doing it in reds and yellows, but if we go back in, we could change those colors just by going to Open in Fusion, just going over here to my background and changing these colors. So I'm just going to disconnect this. Control copy, Control V, Control V, there we go. Just going to connect that one in. And we're going to change this to, let's say, that color and a gray. And now we've got like this more steel metallic type of look instead of bronze and gold. And you can create all these really cool effects. And that's it. Oh, yes, I was saying earlier, this brightness and contrast. I selected pre-divide post-multiply because if I don't, it will convert, it'll apply the effect everywhere. So here, if I remember or remove this, it'll also affect, like, it'll affect things that you don't want it to affect sometimes. Actually, I don't think that for this one we needed to do that. But sometimes if you bring a brightness and contrast in and everything, it starts affecting things that it shouldn't. Like, for example, let's say you were putting this on something that has an alpha and it's literally just the text, and then it starts darkening everything underneath it. You need to pre-divide post-multiply. That's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know I had a lot of fun making these. I really like doing title sequences and retro titles and font stuff. If you guys have any other type of font or title or any other effect you'd like me to do, leave it in the details or in the comments, or hit me up on Reddit. And in the interim, I hope you will subscribe and like and all that wonderful stuff so that YouTube decides to monetize me. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.